Hello, this is Emily. Welcome back to my channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about all 34 books I read in the month of November, which was quite a hefty reading month for me. But hey, I got a lot of books done on my TBR, so let's get right on into it and I'll show you all the books I read this past month. I read Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I gave this book 4 stars, and I really did enjoy this adventure story and all the 80s nostalgia thrown in. And this book actually finally inspired me to watch Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail, which was definitely an interesting movie, just as much as this book was very interesting itself. I read the first 3 volumes of Witch Hat Atelier, and we're following Coco, a young girl who strives to be a witch. However, witches are born, not taught. Except one day she ends up spying on a witch preparing their spells and learns the secret to magic and ends up getting brought into the world of magic and begins to learn how to become a witch. And this is a really cute series. The art is absolutely superb and I find myself enjoying this series from beginning to end, and it's just incredibly detailed throughout. I read Book of Night by Holly Black. This one I gave about 3.5 stars. I really wanted to expect more from this because I have enjoyed prior works from this author. It's just some parts I felt were a little lacking. Though overall, I do think the uniqueness of shadows used here was kind of cool. And I am kind of intrigued to see how the second book pans out, if there is one. I read volumes 9 and 10 of Hunter x Hunter. And I really do enjoy the continuation of the series and can't wait to see what happens next. I finally finished Kiki's Delivery Service. This is a book I started prior this year and then kind of put it down and never got around to it. And finally, I picked it back up again and finished it. I gave this one about 3.5 stars. I really do enjoy the story and thought it was really cute. It's just because it is geared towards younger people, I had to be in the mood to read it. So that's why it was a struggle. It took me so long to finish it because sometimes it's hard for me to get into a book geared towards younger kids. But I did enjoy it, and it brought back a bunch of my favorite memories of watching the movie as a child growing up. I read The Sandman Book 1 by Neil Gaiman, and this one I gave about 3 stars. It's an interesting premise, and I wanted to check out the graphic novels after watching the majority of the Netflix series, and I really thought it was interesting stuff. It's just sometimes the paneling was a little hard to follow. So that's why I kind of docked a few stars there. I read Going Bovine by Libba Bray. This one I gave, I believe, 3 or 3.5 stars. I read it more at the beginning of the month, so I don't quite remember how many stars I gave. Though I thought it was a very unique premise. And I kind of could see what was going on through glimpses. But it was a very wild adventure and also very sad kind of at the end. But I still think overall it was a decent book, and maybe if I read it when I was younger, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. It's just now that I'm older, I didn't enjoy it as much as when I was probably in high school. I read the first volume of the Death Note Black Edition, which contains volumes 1 and 2 of the manga series. I have watched the anime back several years ago and been wanting to get around to actually reading the mangas, and finally picked this one up, and it definitely was an entertaining read, and I gave it 4 stars. I read Dragon Keeper by Robin Hobb, which is the first book in the Rainwild Chronicles. This one I gave 4 stars. I really did enjoy the story and stuff. However, because we're focusing on a bunch of new characters instead of some of the beloved characters, I just wasn't as engaged in this, but I'm sure as I continue on with the series, I will come to love all these new characters too. I read a whole manga series with A Silent Voice, volumes 1 through 7. This one was so good, I literally could not put them down over the span of 2 days. I probably would have read them all in one day, except I had to sleep to go to work the next day, so I had to wait to finish the remaining half the following evening. But this is why here's a very hard-hitting story. We're dealing with bullying and the effects it has on those as they grow up. And I thought it was very thought-provoking, and it did have me in tears at times, but it was such a great, enjoyable read, and I highly recommend this series. I read Darius the Great Deserves Better, which is a companion to Darius the Great. And this one, I wanted to love and stuff. However, I just felt it lacking compared to its prior book. So unfortunately, I only gave this about 3.5 stars. But I mean, it was still a nice continuation to the story, and I enjoyed it at times. It just wasn't what I was expecting it to be. I read Blue Periods, volumes 8 and 9. Both are 5-star reads for me and great continuations on with the series. And I really do love this university arc that I've been experiencing so far. So highly recommend the series because it's very enjoyable. I read The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. I believe I gave this one about 3 stars. It's a children's classic, and we follow this kid Mila who ends up journeying through a toll booth to the land beyond. And I thought it was a nice, cute little read. Definitely geared more towards those in elementary school. So I did find myself a little like rolling my eyes at some of the names and terms and just the story itself. But I think it was still enjoyable overall, and probably a book I would recommend to younger children because I'm sure they would find it really entertaining and enjoy it. I read Blitz by Daniel O'Malley. This one was one I wasn't aware that it had been released, and The Rook and Stiletto are 2 of my favorite books of all time, and this is a continuation on in that world, and I really did enjoy this. It got 4.5 stars from me, and I really did enjoy learning more and having new characters introduced, and I hope he continues writing more books in this world because it's really interesting to learn more about the Checquy and all the world building and interesting abilities he comes up with in these books. The Burning Maze, which is book 3 in the Trials of Apollo series. This one I gave 4 stars, and I thought it was a really good continuation on with the series, though I am shocked about one of the events that did happen here, considering it's a middle grade and I was not expecting it to happen. Don't want to spoil, but I'm sure if you read, you know what happens. And I am really interested to see how the rest of the series is going to unfold. And I definitely do enjoy Rick Riordan and his writing. So it's always a joy to read his works. I read the 3rd volume of Laughing Under the Clouds. This was a nice continuation to the story, though it is a little slow at times, so I was a little bored. So I gave it 3 stars, but I do plan on continuing on, especially with the way this one ended. I read The Devil's Knot by Mara Leverett, which is a true crime following the West Memphis 3 who were committed for killing 3 8-year-old boys back in the 90s. And this was a very intriguing read because it kind of played out the events and everything that unfolded leading up to their arrests and life sentences. And honestly, I'm very embarrassed with the judicial system that handled this and the investigative team and all that, because a lot of the stuff that was handled, I'm just like shocked that the investigation was conducted that way, the interrogations were done that way, and all the lapses and stories or clear and convincing evidence was not presented or suddenly appeared out of nowhere at the time of trial that they just found laying there after 2 years. So definitely it's a book I would check out. And since the book has been released, these boys actually were acquitted back, I think, in the mid-2000s. But this was published prior to them being released from prison. But it's definitely a thought-provoking read. It made you think, were they truly guilty? Or was someone else the culprit that just got away with it? So definitely would recommend checking this out, and also checking out more information, like just from reading articles and stuff post publication of this book. I read Horimiya volume 5. Sorry, I forgot what volume this was because I've read so much manga this month. This is a great continuation on with the story. Gave it 4.5 stars, and I am definitely intrigued to keep on reading this series. It's just a cute little lighthearted read and has some very entertaining characters in it. I read Nimona, which I gave 4 stars, and I thought this was a really quirky graphic novel, and I did enjoy the story and the characters and had a lot of laughs along the way, and I would definitely recommend checking this out because this is a pretty great story. I read My Love Mix-Up Volume 5, which I gave 4 stars. This is another entertaining series that's just lighthearted and quick read that I've been enjoying, and I can't wait for the next volumes to be released. I read White Trash Warlock by David Slayton. This is a independently published book where we are following this magician named Adam Binder as he tries to solve the mystery of his brother's wife being possessed, as well as locate his missing father. And this is a really interesting read, and I really enjoyed it. At first, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not, so I kind of put it down and then got back around to reading it. And I'm glad I did get back around to reading it, because once I got into it, I was hooked and basically ordered the second book after finishing this one, because it was just that great of a read. And I am intrigued to see how the series continues on after what was revealed at the end of this one, especially because it left on quite a cliffhanger. I continued on with My Hero Academia Volume 22, which is a great continuation on with the series. And I can't wait to pick up the next volumes, and hopefully I can get these volumes caught up by the time the latest anime has finished streaming, so I can watch that too. I read A Diary of Blood by Satie Gibson, and this is basically kind of a twist on Dracula and his brides, and I really found it entertaining and enjoyed the story overall. And this edition is absolutely stunning. It's my Fairy Loot edition, which has these nice sprayed edges, and then the end pages are absolutely stunning. And basically this was a 5-star read for me, and I really love like the narrative itself, and it's just the flow of the story overall. And there were some steamy scenes in here too, so just FYI, don't read it if you're under 18, but I would definitely recommend this book. The last book I'm going to talk about that I read this past month was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And this was a 4.5-star read for me, and another steamy fantasy that I really enjoyed, and ended up picking up the second book because this one was so great, and I can't wait to see what happens next. But I definitely would recommend checking the series out, because I really enjoyed the character growth and kind of like the world building and what was going on and the truth behind the characters' traits in here. But definitely great read, and I enjoyed it. Well, 34 books was quite a feat this month, and I am glad I was able to get so many books read in the month of November, because I do have quite a big TBR. As you can see, all these 2 shelves behind me are completely full of books I need to complete and finish reading. Plus, I have 2 more shelves in my room full of unread books too. So I'm glad I got a big chunk of those down. And hopefully the month of December fares well with reading too, even though it is the holidays and I might not have as much time to read, because I will be focused more on spending time with my family during that month. But hey, at least I have met my reading goal so far this year, and can't wait to get some more great books read. But other than that, thank you guys for watching. If you had any interesting reads this month, feel free to share them below. Or if you saw any books here that you read and your thoughts on them, if they differ, feel free to comment below. But that's it for today, and I will see you guys in my next video.